I'm letting everyone know where I live because I just want to let you know, Bo, it is my birthday today, by the way.
Ooh, happy birthday.
And this is what I'm doing on my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
I know. I feel I would have added a birthday slide.
Oh, well, I didn't. Yeah, I should have told you. So, I was going to try to take the day off, but it just hasn't worked out. So, plus we're getting snow here. So we're in a winter storm warning. So
oh no.
Yeah. Again.
That's Bo's favorite weather. We should probably put that down. What's your favorite, not just favorite food, but what's your favorite weather? Bo would be Iowa in February trying to walk on ice, right?
On ice. Yeah.
You should see Bo. We taught him how to penguin walk. I don't know if it was David or me or whatever. So.
And I think that one time, in fact, I tried to cross the track.
Yeah.
Going to your office, I was really concerned. Even the thing's so slippery. I also killed myself by, falling and bumping my head to the rail.
Oh yeah, you don't want that, do you?
Yeah.
Freight train would get you after that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I guess we get started. It's 1:02, so hopefully everyone dropped their name and where they're from in the chat. And if you haven't, please take a moment to do that now so we can all see where everyone's joining us from. And so welcome to FME In Transportation for our lovely January weather. Unlike Eric, it is like 40 and sunny in Connecticut, almost 50. So it is not quite January weather here, which I am all for. Move on. I do realize I have a little typo in the agenda. Sorry about that, guys. So we're going to kind of go over the background and purpose. We're going to have a little just plug for JIST. That's in Oklahoma City in April coming up. And we are having an FME panel, which is extremely exciting. So if you're going out to that, please check us out. I'm going to go over our speaker presentations, Q&A, and wrap up. So again, for GIST, here's just a screenshot of the website. Registration is open. It's April 11th through the 14th. So if you're interested or you think your organization might be interested, head out to the website and check it out. Bo, Eric, David, and I will be on a panel, and some of the topics we will be discussing you could see on the screen. So there will be some like DOT on the panel as well as some private that all these guys are absolutely brilliant in what they do and have a lot of great information to share.
I'll throw this out there too, as we're doing a workshop beforehand, which will be like, 4 hours, I think, talking about these topics. And then I also have a presentation with Bo on basically your data ETL, data engineering toolbox, including FME and other options out there in addition to FME, basically picking the right tool for the job.
Awesome.
I think, did we get a SIG as well?
Still waiting to hear confirmation on a SIG. So
Right.
If you guys send me that, I could add that into the slide for our March meeting as well too.
Once we hear, I'll let you know.
And then I guess we also forgot to add, was it Tom from FHWA is also going to be.
Did he confirm? I couldn't find it in the email chain. So I'll add that too.
Yeah, Tom. Yeah, Tom Rolfe will be participating in the workshop. Yep.
All right, I'll add him in to the slide for the March meeting as well. But again, April 11th through 14th, there's going to be an awesome thing. So if you're interested in your organization is, please go to the website and do what you need to get your approval. So background of this group is it's created by Bo at GISTech to research in geodesigns with approval of safe software. And I believe that community involvement benefits all. So, a lot of us, I know I didn't really start using FME until I came to the DOT. So it's just a great group to kind of learn and evolve and ask questions, have resources to when other people at your agency might not have the knowledge that you need to move forward. We have Bo, which is super exciting. He's going to share all of his knowledge with us. He's the founder for GISTech Research and a GIST pro who loves LRS. Favorite food is turnip, and favorite FME transformer is attribute manager. I have to laugh, Bo. I love turnips too, and no one else eats them. So I grow them in my garden and I just make them.
I used to think that same way, and then I started learning how to eat them and make them, and they're actually pretty good. So Bo, looks like Jenny can help you out.
I love them. I'm the only one that eats them in my household. So I always have like these big bushels of them, and then they sit in my basement all year, and I just randomly eat them throughout the year. And everyone else stares at me weirdly. So you and I are different in that aspect. So, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bo. Take it over.
Okay, thanks. It's my pleasure to share what I know, and I think I'd like to start with my my least favorite food. I think that was my aversion to turnip. Was only my childhood situation, but through positive reinforcement of my parents, and through somehow I grew out of that. So at this moment, it's hard for me to say I don't like any food. I'm very open-minded. I'm very adventurous in terms of food. So I yeah, also I'm very rational, thinking food is nurturing, food is a necessity. And so I'm not picky on that anymore. And regarding the second, I was talking about a favorite, Transformers. It's hard for me to pick one, but I have to say, just like the majority of us, and would say, attribute manager is the one that's the new favorite, I would say, because it's relatively new. And have you ever given as much thought in why that is the case? And perhaps you can just, text through the chat session and tell us why you like it. But at the same time, I'd like to ask, do you know how many functions actually the manager attempts to address? Well, maybe we can, let's see the chat session, see if people can entertain some of their thoughts. I would say I'm typing like, you can delete and remove, actually the remover, right? That would be one. And attribute renamer, renamer, and attribute setter, right? Kind of creator. You can create a new thing, right? Anything else? Anyone?
I use Attribute Manager all the time for a lot of our larger
Right.
data sets that we bring together for schema changes before we put them in our SDE. It makes
Right.
life so much easier.
So much easier. Yeah, it really, you uses so many different things. There's also one attribute, exposure. You can expose hidden attributes, right? So then attribute creator itself is very powerful, right? And I think there's another one. Another one would be a sorter. So you can sort the sequence. You can move around the sequence, other thing wouldn't do. But however, I have always been hesitant using attribute manager. One reason is, it's a pain in the tail because it's relatively new. So there's always new versions coming out. Then each and every time that need to upgrade, if you use gazillion of them throughout, you just have to go through them very, in earnest, and you have to do an upgrade as you upgrade from one version to another. So that's kind of pain. The other thing I have always been thinking, it is very useful, powerful. However, maybe the code, the memory usage can be too much because it's trying to accommodate so many features. At the same time, you probably only use one or two. So in that sense, would you think, so I'm having second thoughts sometimes, say, I only need to rename. I might just use renamer, rather than use actually the manager just with the rename function. So I tend to think if I only do one or two things, one thing at a time, I still use the classic individual transformer. But when it comes to a bunch of things are all working at the same time, of course, I use it. And in terms of the memory consumption and process using one versus the other, it's hard to tell. And perhaps if you have multiple instances, if you have like use 10 attribute renamer, attribute the manager is actually loading memory only once anyway. So it's not a big deal. Yeah. So there are many things you can think about. Of course, it's not too difficult to do experiment. You know, for example, if you can just bring in 1 million records and doing the comparison, looking at from the log, looking at the performance and looking at the memory consumption. But I didn't have time to do that. But I'm just thinking out loud, just on a favorite transformer and its ramification in terms of the runtime efficiency. It certainly brings the neatness by hiding some of the complexities, hiding some of the different type of attribute management in the process. My bandwidth is really limited. I also have VPN connected. So I'm just going to kill my video if you don't mind.
Make a quick plug too. I put an idea in chat that I've had for like, I guess what, 6 years almost now, around this exact idea, because you can do so much complexity within Attribute Manager, which, Bo, I think you stole my favorite transformer as well. But I'll let you have it for this one. But really the advancedness of it, right, is it needs something to be able to describe what's happening. Like I know I've combined, when I go back through workflows, I've combined what, 5 or 6 transformers into one attribute manager, just because you can do basically everything with a single one. But in doing that, that takes the ability to understand what's going on, and it really compresses it into one transformer. And really, I guess, looking at through the comments too of Dale actually mentioned of looking at adding a description or something to all transformers moving forward. I guess that was 2 years ago now. But really being able to have something that says, hey, this is what's going on, especially with when you get to a attribute that you add and you can do the conditional statements. Yeah, you have a really complex conditional statement and you just want to like type a blurb of what you're doing within that conditional statement. It makes it easier to view it. So go vote for my idea. That's my shameless plug.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I really love this conversation, and anyone wants to chime in? Yeah, sure. This is what I think our webinar series is, generally speaking, pretty informal, just communicate and share. And with FME dynamism, I think I titled this way, is also share my my thought and some of the practice we do, but certainly not in a systematic manner yet. I hope I can somehow logically thread them together, making it more meaningful. But it's my first attempt. Okay, I think start off why we have this, think about it. If we have a all-purpose language, we'll be able to do many of the things. We're not bound by certain kind of limitations or certain specific pattern. We can just do anti-patterns and whatever we want, right? And that's all-purpose language. Of course, you need to be really good at that and to do everything. And on the other spectrum of this no-code movements, essentially can certain things. And FME is kind of belong to this camp. But I really think FME did excellent job by breaking down with so many components that you can visually do it and put them together like Lego and solving your problem. And it is, in that sense, I think is very flexible already. And some of dynamic, inactive things it's lacking, but just in this no code camp, it's just to, I would think it's pretty good. But however, it is still not enough. And I will show some of the cases that if we can do more dynamic ways, and it will really free our minds and efforts up. So I'd like to talk about some terminologies. And FME would say dynamic workflow. And I think using workflow, the term workflow in the FME sense, it implies there's some visual patterns involved. I tend to say using a more kind of in the computing landscape, people would use dynamism. And I think I couldn't find a real good definition of that, but I'm leaning towards a design time abstraction and generalization, which leads to a runtime flexibility, ultimate flexibility. So the benefit, it's more capable and less coding, and minimized maintenance because you have less code, and the flexibility in terms of end user, in terms of your code. Essentially, one simple code can entertain many of the scenarios on the fly. Yeah, based upon the user needs. It's no longer hard coded stuff. Yeah. So the caveats can be hard to develop and debug. There's conceptual abstraction. Sometimes the design involved, so additional layer involved. Hard to use transformers, or some of which is kind of hard. And needs some knowledge of FME under the hood would be helpful. And occasionally you found some FME inconsistencies that can drive you really nuts. And not being there. Yeah. And so this is that. And let's first look at the first pattern. It's dynamic schema. Essentially saying, I think everyone heard about clip and ship application. So in that type of application, so user can, identify in any area, identify any layer of interest, then you can specify any allowable output formats to download, to get your data, right? So in here is mostly the generic writer is keenly used. The newer thing that really empowers this generic writer being more flexible, you can have additional treatment with your output is schema scanner, which is relatively new. I think in the last maybe couple years. Yeah. And here's one pattern, on the, if you can see my mouse here. So after the attribute keeper, which we have essentially we have identified the columns of the data set I processed, then I like to write to have a writer output, because it's a GIS writer. I need to write output to it. So without knowing its output columns, right? So using a scanner to see the columns, the types involved in your final data set after the keeper. And then you made sure the original data essentially create two things. One, this one scanner is only identify the feature type name with its feature type data set. Then you have your raw data set, right? The two combined together, write to it, and it's able to do it. So here you see the format is generic writer, any format or writing to it. It's configured using a parameter and user can identify. Then you notice data set I'm heavily using, I just using the workspace name. That way I'm not hard coding it, but you need to have a discipline of creating your workspace name in a meaningful fashion, so the output also very meaningful. And over here, say, okay, I have a, this one actually sometimes isn't all that important, I think. But anyhow, Geometry is coming from the schema definition, because schema definition will specify what type of geometry, what point or line or what have you, right? Then dynamic schema definition is coming from this type. So it's really hard to understand it. Sometimes you just have to play with it. Play with it and read some of which, and kind of then you get a sense of how internally the data stream and also the schema definition stream, how to combine together. And this computer, the definition stream needs to come first, otherwise it will fail. So sometimes I would use a feature holder here to ensure this goes by first. So, but it's very powerful. It's hard to use. And in situations, you think about using it. So let's go on to a pattern number 2, is data-driven logic. So every time if you want to use if statement and what have you, testers and here and there by tying those things into a particular columns and attributes, you lose a generic capacity, right? So I have here example of you separate the rules from engine running. You keep FME as an engine and rule as data set, right? And so here are the examples of we're doing it. And this one example is HPMS. So we like to create HPMS section file because we have 70 of them, we all know, right? And almost 70 of them. If we like to create them one by one, you have to code them, differently. So can we just create one FME? By reading through this, we'll be able to generate all the section files all at once, or allow user to pick and choose which one they want to do, right? So here essentially some of the metadata over here, we identify, whether it's very numeric, whether text, whether conversion is needed, including ramp or not including ramp, and the other type of filter using this filter, essentially a cross-layer filter, right? And we don't care anything is on primitive road in the case of West Virginia, yeah. And going through essentially putting rules over here. Then another example of this would be we have a rules table. So rules table identifying this is C for cross implementation type is C is cross. So we have one rule, it's a cross rule involve all these different layers. They need to meet this, right? So this is the rules we use to do QC on all the FME, all the HPMS type of layers. So that you don't hard code them, and you're reading this. Then apply that. So this is the second pattern. I think it's powerful, and you have the separation of logic from your FME and making the change of rules a matter of an exercise of updating rules. You can have subject matter experts to manage this while you being the FME developer managing the workflow. And in most cases, you just need to accommodate any new changes, but your code change would be minimum. Then third, we use quite a bit is called single stream. And I use single stream, I don't know, maybe generic port or single stream sounds cool, so I use this term. So basically when you read stuff here, here's the example. When you read the features, we're reading features, not hard coding the individual features such as LRC ADT or LRC, function classification. We through parameters or through attributes, which I later will talk about. Then the where class statement is also, in the rows and highway scenario, and the names are consistent throughout the LRC. With this consistent namings, we can use the combined ones, also passing through the parameter, right? And the things we're using single output. So output comes to as generic. So you will see these are generic. Then you need to expose. And sometimes because of generic, oftentimes, sometimes you need a pivot. So this expose, pivot. So attribute pivoter and attribute exposer. And attribute exposer has a limitation of you have to pick a known thing. It's hard coding it. Then how do we get overcome that? So we like to only pick the one we want to expose dynamically rather than have to hard code it. Because other, once you change your source layers, and that particular column is no longer relevant. If you expose them, it will show up, but having missing values, right? So that's the some of other challenges would ensue with this single port, and what I use the single stream pattern, having multiple layer data all coming through. Right? So that's another one. And the third, I think, is dynamic output of the force is a dynamic output. And dynamic output, I think earlier I showed something, essentially the file name. You don't hard code file name, and or you can define them given certain conditions and make them either based on parameter in this case, or based on attribution or attribute values. And you can also use this in case of Excel, which this is Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. You can dynamically identify the types. Here is essentially using internally derived assigned attribute report name as tabs, right? So we have, I have all 6 tabs over here. Each of them have different names, of course. And you probably also know about the fan out. Fan out, let's say you want to divvy up your entire output of a state LS network into however many districts you have. You can create district 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then just using fan out pattern, it will create 4 or 5, or in the case of West Virginia, we have 10 different districts. Each will have their own file-based geodatabase as output, to publish. So that's fan out pattern. I think I lump them into this dynamic output using variables, and to avoid duplication. Then the last one, I would say is dynamic parameter. We'll say, is that oxymoron? Parameter itself is prior to the runtime, user make a definition. Once it's defined, you cannot change it. Well, it is true. So the parameter is allow user to interact. The interaction is different from dynamic. Yeah, I get it. But I'm here, I think the pattern here is you can convert parameter into attribute. Then you can use attribute to feed into a sub workflow, and of course we also call it a custom transform, embedded custom transform. This is the case, say I'm getting this generic thing, and I know I'm passing along, say I'm doing rule number 1, and then I pass the layers and attributes pertaining to this rule into this layer overlay analysis, which we write to a database. I'll write to a spreadsheet file, having the overlay outcome, output in that, such as you want overlay all the tops, 6 or 5 of them, as one output. You can simply identify the tops menu and also identify the list of attributes pertaining of each layer. Then it will do. So this kind of like dynamic at this moment you send to a sub unit. And certainly we all know about scripted parameter. It's part of when you create parameter, you use Python to having certain rules within that. And that is still pre-runtime. Okay? It's kind of started, but it started at first in parameter. So, so these are some of the tools we use, of course, and if everything fails, think about Python. I'm glad that next next FME, potentially we will have someone talk about their use of Python. And I know if you ask, there's two different camps. If you ask some of the FME pros, and they are quite averse to use Python. And the reason being, we need to be pure FME, essentially visual, and that uses no code. We need to go this route. But when you get in dynamic situation, I lean more and more towards using Python. Of course, as a last resort, we try not to do that because making it less maintainable, right? But we have identified a few just in last couple of days, and Julia, myself, being hammering out a few common patterns in using Python to dynamically expose and dynamically aggregate attribute values, giving users selection, what have you. So I found that to be really a way to, I would say, augment the already pretty complete tool set of FME to achieve a truly dynamic paradigm. Yeah. So lastly, I'd like to show some of the examples here. By the way, I'm using West Virginia's case over here. Yueming allowed me to share with you. It's still work in progress, and it's only a couple months into this effort. And here are some of the things, and this is a few of things I just put together real quickly. One's HTML section file creation. So we're using single stream, and we're in dynamic output and table logic driven. Yeah, we didn't use any dynamic parameter in that case. Then, so the idea here is, user can pick, say, hey, we're having trouble with the function classification. We're going to run that multiple times because this generation does the filtering and basic filtering. Then later we also at the same time we'll do the quality control, rejecting the things. And so the output come will very clean of that. You can select multiple of them, except one of them, and to do that. And I might have a chance to show the portion of it which is still under construction. And the full extent QC is many of the layers are supposed to be full coverage of all routes. But it's very easy to make a mistake. So this QC is identified. You can pick any of the layers. Say, I would like to see if these layers, they all have full coverages. They are not missing any part, missing segments. Like ADT need to be full, function classification need to be full. But if you have that in comparison with your route, you might have some full. So this one we're using, pretty much everything. Yeah. And domain QC, I think we're only using single stream. This one is Rosen-Hawi domain QC. That one is one. And business, we have business, we have interlayer, interlayer, and this is, we we struggle, and we finally pretty much have this now. So we have the whole gamut of this. And this one we need to use this because different QC, we need to generate intermediate overlay file, I would say table, temporary table, with which we can apply the logic, business logic, which turn into a SQL to do it, which will be faster, and which we can do it without coding. Because if you use tester, you have to do one by one. performance won't be as accurate. So we're going to save that over to the database. Then use the logic which converted into SQL where clause to identify errors. Yeah. Then self-service reporting. Yes, we have done that as well. And user can pick and choose and identify a few things, and then this, because the service reporting, the outcome will be different. So it's using a dynamic schema to do that and dynamic output. Yeah, with that. So that's basically I have. And any questions before I possibly can show some of the live a few things?
You can also feel free to drop questions in the chat as well.
Okay. This one is, I name it as Event Interlayer Business SQL by Rule 2. I mean, this one's still in the experiment stage, and which I showed you here. And so if you run this guy, so identify the rule. I think this rule actually is going to be moved here. You can pick different rules at this moment, right? And we identified staging environment in future production and testing environment. So by changing this, all the connections gets automatically switched over. Then you specify the type of routes of interest, county route above, where interest you can pick others. So again, this is not dynamic per se, but it requires, because of the different selection, this is called interactive, right? But interactive needs to be supported by a dynamic schema oftentimes. Then I say I'm only interested in any route, within a certain, start with 3, right? You can pick a date for if it's today, and you can, in fact, you can identify a particular version. You want to pick output as that, you can pick, a bunch of other things as output. So this, you run through this, which I have ran. And so this is really identify a few things, identify the layers involved, and if there's any attributes and a few other auxiliary stuff. And of course, we need to expand this. We have separate things to identify, given this rule, convert that into a SQL where clause. Then this one, this is reading by layers, by identified typical where clause to read this and read this SDE layer, and then we use the single output. Then have a typical, the common features exposed here. Uncommon ones we do it in a separate fashion. In fact, going over to cross-layer overlay, this is where it attempts to do a bunch of things and join this. And we also have you have the schema readers and what have you over here, so that it will output into a thing which I showed earlier. So this is how this is essentially to be done by reading, using. We send the logic into a SQL database to kept over there and reading it and going through this process. Of course, we could have read this through a spreadsheet, but I think for important rules, it's better to be stored in a central, more authoritative, well-protected location, which the database is a better fit. So this is one example. And this one, earlier I mentioned about the event interlayer extend check. So you can, so this one you can identify what layers of interest. So we like urban code, facility, and federal aids. So we're going to do this, and so you can close a few other things. These are the ones, most of the ones over here, they are, yeah. So you just identify which one you want to check whether they have fully extended or not. Then you can specify the typical sign codes, what have you, for doing that, identify that, and you specify output. Then it will run through that. Yeah, so that's the extent situation. This is the gallery, app gallery, and having different, this is for topology check and geometry check, and this whole 9 yards over here. I'd like to do one. Oh, it should be here, yeah. So I think I have one other thing I'd like to do, wrong workspace. Okay, so this generating a section file. Let's say we're going to remove here, and let's just remove to so it'll be faster. And let's remove the structure. So, okay, I'm interested in creating section files from here, making this a download. So if we just run, it will, once it's completed, going through, it will create a section file for each member submittal. Yeah, of course, at this moment, we have yet to hook up the quality control portion of it, which we've done in other places like business. So when we hook up our inter and intra-layer business with this, so the process will take even longer. Then you can just open this up. And I think this is meant to be a self-servicing type of scenario. Yeah, so we have this created. Then if you look at this, you have this pipe derivative scenario over there. Yeah. So I think we still need a header, I guess. Yeah. So we didn't do header. We're going to do header in future. Again, right now, we are only looking at the patterns, looking at the key components, the how we can really just using very simple, very generic. So if you think, okay, I'd like to take a look at how it is, how it's looking. And let's look at the report. Rule summary, where's the other report? You know, we haven't tidied this up yet, but again, this is all the code we have for generating so far with limited filtering. We haven't built all the filtering. So there's no hard code, and you can generate any section files of interest. So think about maintaining this, and it will support all 70 section files, and it will be really a pleasant experience rather than you have to handcraft 7 different workflows and workbench, files for it, or having one humongous one. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's all I have. And I'd like to entertain any questions and any suggestions. And yeah, appreciate that.
Hi, Bo, it's Jenny. So do you have like the end user uploading the files via server app? Is that what you had set up there?
For end users to upload the file for quality control, is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and we haven't built that portion yet, but we talked about it because at West Virginia DOT, the traffic data, like all the ADT stuff and percent green on those, being handled by them, and they generate section files. And they, in the past, they essentially throw the file over to the wall for us to, oh, well, we need to throw something over to them so they can generate. And then we ingest their data into our system. So we're thinking about having them upload and QC and tell them, hey, you have this issue violation. You fix that, then you go through that. Yes, that's part of this, part of our work. Yeah, in fact, but we haven't done that portion yet. We did similar things in other places though. Yeah, so that pattern is very, very helpful. Essentially, you're empowering user, self-serving, not just getting. Self-service allow them to fix their own data before hand over to you, before creating a final output.
I know we have some newer FME users on the call, so like the server app kind of allows the outside organization to upload data and QC themselves before you go through like the whole FME process. So those of you that aren't familiar, it's kind of a good way to encourage some of the non-FME users to get their data into the system.
Right. This is the, I think our self-service reporting includes that, yeah. Okay, being pretty quiet. I know it can be difficult to digest some of which, but feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, if any comments, I appreciate it. Yeah.
So Bo, for your Python call, are you creating a custom script in that for this, or do you have like some other custom things you've built and it's pulling that code? I couldn't read like fully the font. My eyes aren't that good when you're sharing your workflow.
Somehow I can barely hear you.
Oh, am I?
You know, it most likely is my mic, my speaker isn't all that good. So could you repeat that again?
Yes, the Python caller, I was wondering if you can kind of go over that part of your workflow again that you were showing.
Mhm. Okay. You would like to see that?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure.
I'm interested in it. I hope other people are.
Yeah, let me. Where's okay, I'm here in fact, yeah. So I started with the template. So first of all, I identified because we passed through the because value numeric, it can have multiple columns because we only have one under the numeric. There's two. So we separate that into, so basically essentially become a 2 columns under value numeric, yeah, which is a unit split. Then we create a value of array. Then we put them together. Then later we join them with a comma. So the value, so the value numeric is only saying I have this column, comma, that column, that all needs to be handled by you. And then in the outcome will be the event attribute will have the attribute values of the 2 columns identified under here being separated by a comma, being separated by a comma. Then we spit that out. So here you see I expose event attribute because for by and large, for linear referencing model, we're only producing 1 column, right? So if you have function classification, LRC, you just have function classification field of concern. The other is, it's auxiliary, right? Defining the conditions on which this exists. And all the location of that exists. So that I just use this, so we can standardize a column name, then we can call it. Avoid using a dynamic name, say this is function classification, that's ownership, like that. So yeah, so this is only snippet of code to dynamically getting the name of the column, then getting the value of the name. This is another term I would say I could throw at here is the macro substitution. So you specify the name, but it returns the value of that name. The name, of course, is attribute name or column name. So I don't know if this helps, but basically through this effort, we are getting the value and the standardized under the name of event attribute. then everything else going down there will be all be standardized. Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you.
sure. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing and I send back to you, Jenny.
Alrighty, I will take over sharing the screen. Give me 1 second. So I just want to, can everyone see my screen? Oh no, I didn't hit share yet. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yeah,
Yep. All right, awesome. I want to thank Bo for presenting today. That was really, I learned a lot. I hope everyone else found a lot of value in it as well. So again, just to wrap up, we have our JSTs coming up in a few months. If you're interested in going, please check us out when you're there. And then our next event is March 15, 2023. So there's a few people that contacted me that are interested in speaking. So once we solidify who will be speaking, we will send that out to everyone. If you have any questions or comments, please drop it in the chat. Otherwise, thank you for popping in today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful Wednesday.
thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.